Aarón. I will tell the rest of this story in her own words. From her perspective, everything seemed to be going wonderfully for the Aarón family. Since we graduated from high school, everything was going smoothly. But there was something strange. Mysterious marks appeared on his back as if they were scars caused by burns. They didn't pay much attention to it. He went to the dermatologist and was told that sometimes the skin loses pigmentation due to stress, but that it wasn't something to worry about. However, what stress could he have if his family was going through its best moment? As you know, I know that being in contact with Aarón is not at all unfamiliar to you since he and I were always attracted to each other. So, a few months after he left, we became a couple. We were in a relationship for a few years, and when we were both 20 we got married. We were too young, but by that time Aarón was already the owner of his dad's businesses, who passed away just after he turned 18. His mom died 7 months later. At the wedding we had a big ceremony, a huge party, but there was always something strange. No candle could ever be lit in Aaron's presence. On our wedding day no candle lit in the house. I couldn't light candles on my altar, and now at the wake, as you saw, the candles could never stay lit, as if something didn't want a light to shine for him. We could never have children. We tried and tried. We went through tests. Aarón was sterile, and they found a rare condition in him. The ducts responsible for transporting sperm were blocked by scars, as if he had suffered an illness or had been injured, but it was a very rare condition, said the doctor. The scars were in both testicles and were very large. Too large. When we were given that news, his way of being changed a lot. He started going to parties, getting involved in stronger things, stopped coming home, and, obviously, began being unfaithful to me. I never blamed him for anything. I told him it didn't matter, that I loved him, but something broke when he received that news. I don't know, losing his parents so young, not being able to have kids, the responsibility of everything he had to manage, it all ended up consuming him slowly, little by little. I don't know how we lasted so long. Until last August we got divorced. That's why this apartment is very talked about. I came to live here after we separated. I put up with everything, I put up with a lot, but I really loved him. When we separated he cut back a lot on partying. I saw him calmer. He said that losing me opened his eyes and that he wanted another chance. I told him I would keep living in the apartment and that I wanted to see him well, but that I wouldn't go back to his side until I saw that he was truly changing. He left me a set of keys to his house and told me that I would need them at some point, and without thinking much, I kept them in my coat. Months went by and I saw him improving more and more. He was even going to support groups and I felt happy. I thought it was the light at the end of the tunnel, but that day never came. It was December 18th. Aarón woke me up with a call at 3 in the morning. He said something had woken him up. A hoarse voice whispered in his ear, "Hello." He woke up startled and saw the shadow of someone running out of his room into the living room. He had a gun on the nightstand, so he didn't hesitate. He decided to go check, thinking maybe a thief had gotten in, but it had to be a very skilled thief because the alarms on the doors and windows hadn't gone off. He checked but didn't find anything unusual. He went back to bed but couldn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning I called him around 8 to check how he was doing. I thought I was going to wake him up, but he was already awake. He told me he had a very strange night, one of those where you try to sleep, but you just keep tossing and turning in bed. He decided to start the day early. He was going to exercise, shower, and go to the office to review numbers. He thought that by the time night came, he'd be so tired that he would fall asleep instantly. I thought it was a good plan. I wished him a good day and we said goodbye. That night I was sleeping peacefully when another call from Aarón woke me up. He told me that something was happening at his house, that he had been sleeping well when a disgusting smell woke him up. He said it smelled like burning hair or chicken feathers or things like that, a very strong smell, but he couldn't tell where it was coming from in the house. It's a residential area where there are no restaurants or kitchens around, and even if there were, I don't think anyone would be cooking at 3 in the morning. Aarón got up, left his room, and found that the smell was coming from inside the house. He headed downstairs. Everything was off. Only the small emergency lights barely illuminated the gloom. He spotted a bright light at the far end in the kitchen, a light filtering through the slats of the door was fire. Something was burning inside. He ran in panic, thinking that perhaps a stove grill was on or that a short circuit had caused a fire, but when he entered he saw, incredulously, the horror. Forgive me for taking a breath, but what Aarón told me he saw still terrifies me. Aarón said he saw something burning, the remains of what seemed to be a black bird, something that couldn't be well distinguished, wrapped in flames. There was so much smoke that he couldn't recognize what it was. The video was disgusting. He turned it off, threw that thing in the trash outside the house, grabbed the keys to his car and drove here. When he arrived it smelled awful. We thought the smell had stuck to his clothes, so he went to take a shower and I put his clothes in the washer and dryer while he took the bath. That night he slept here with me. If I had known it would be the last night we spent together, I would have hugged him every minute. The next day I visited Aarón at his house. He seemed unsure. Despite having arranged for a thorough cleaning of the place, the smell lingered and he didn't wear clothes. He emitted that burned scent that couldn't be masked by any fragrance. It seemed to come from his pores. He stopped going out to public places because of the embarrassment it caused him. On December 22nd he called me at 6 in the morning. He asked me to come see him, said it was urgent. I got ready and headed to his house. When I arrived I rang the bell and he opened the door immediately. It seemed like he was waiting right on the other side. He hugged me and thanked me for coming. He told me something was happening, that at night he was sleeping as much as the stench allowed him. When he felt someone grab his neck he thought it was something happening in the dream, until he began to feel a burning sensation that woke him up, a real burning. Something was burning him. He got out of bed but saw nothing and wanted to think that it had only been a very real dream, but when he woke up in the morning, when he got up to go to the bathroom, in the mirror, he saw the mark of what had touched him. That was when he called me. I clearly remember what he said, the fear in his voice. The time was up. Lucy is coming for me. I felt like a bolt had pierced my body. The memory hit me with the strength of a tornado and shook my mind and body. I told him no, that how could he believe in such things, that it was impossible. Even though, deep down, I was really scared for him, I secretly believed it could be true. Since then, Aarón had vivid dreams where he saw himself burning. Each dream felt very real. He said he could feel how his skin burned, how he saw his skin peeling off because of the flames, and when he woke up there were always marks. They burned as if they were real burns. On January 2nd he called me and said he needed me to accompany him to a place. I hesitated a bit, but in the end I agreed. We went to a pretty ugly neighborhood in the La Merced area. Honestly, I was terrified. At the entrance of the neighborhood, there was a group of men with a very rough appearance. Aarón asked them about Mrs. Martina, and they told him where she was, not without first asking for their respective caguama, a type of drink. We entered, and the house of that lady was the last one at the back. There were cages where we could see some feathers, like rooster feathers or something similar. Aarón knocked and the lady opened the door. She looked unkempt, with worn-out clothes and an intense gaze. She stared at Aarón, said we could come in, but then almost shouted, "Not you, you're not welcome." Aarón stood still, thinking she was referring to him, but the lady grabbed him by the arm and pulled him inside. I went in behind them. The first thing she did was ask him, "What did you do?" She didn't know why we were there, yet she asked him that question. At first we tried to make her believe we didn't know what had happened. But the lady knew more than she appeared to. We ended up confessing what we had done years ago. In great detail. She paused for a moment. Then she looked up, stared at him, and told him she couldn't help him, that no one could, and that she hoped he had enjoyed himself because now it was his turn to pay. Aarón stood up very upset, as he had paid a large sum of money for the lady to help him, and all she said was that he had no escape. He ran out of that house and I was about to follow him when the lady grabbed my arm and said, "Girl, that burned being, that demon is coming for him, but it won't hesitate to remove anyone who stands in its way. He made a deal and his time is up." I ran after Aarón, who was already waiting for me in the car. I drove us here to the apartment and he dropped me off at the entrance of the building. I saw how he drove away at full speed, and that day I didn't hear from him again. At 4 in the morning he woke me up again. He was crying, told me he had seen it, that a strong burning sensation in his chest made him squeeze it, that he ran to the bathroom to check himself, and there, behind him, outside the bathroom, it was waiting. There it was, reflected in the mirror. He saw it come closer until it was fully visible. It no longer hid, even though it was in the dark. He saw its burned face. Behind it, the skin was peeling off in pieces, and the smell of burning was getting closer. Its expression was one of mockery, as if it were enjoying the torture. It didn't make any sound, it just smiled with those rotten teeth, with lips that seemed melted. He said it was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen or imagined. Even when that thing took another step towards Aarón, he closed his eyes, but that didn't stop it from getting closer. He felt it. He felt how it touched him, how it burned him as if it were a hot iron. The pain made him scream and flail to defend himself, but when he opened his eyes, he realized there was no one else there. He told me he couldn't take it anymore and hung up. My only hope was Luis, so I went looking for him. I went to ask around the neighborhood because some time ago, someone had told me he had become a priest. I asked everywhere until I found someone who knew where his parish was. "Do you remember, Luis? When I went to look for you, The first thing you told me was that you were very afraid of when this day would come. You asked about Aarón and I brought you up to speed on everything, and in fact, guys, thanks to Luis I was able to contact the others through his work. Luis knows someone who knows someone who knows someone who ends up knowing everyone. He told me that our soul doesn't belong to us, that it belongs to the Creator, so we can't make a deal offering something that isn't ours. Property that God forgives to those who truly repent, to those who don't only repent because they feel death near, but he also told me there's a sin that can't be forgiven: suicide. There's no opportunity for repentance in that. We believe that maybe that's why that thing couldn't come and take Aarón on its own. It wanted to hurt him first, torture him, make it unbearable so he would attempt against his life, and only then drag him with it to eternal punishment. According to what Luis told me, we had to figure out how to help him before he did something irreversible. I spent that whole day and the next trying to reach Aarón. I went looking for him, but he was nowhere to be found. He called me again at night, around 10. He said he was very tired. I could hear it in his voice. He hadn't been able to sleep since the last time we spoke. He covered all the mirrors in the place where he was, as he always saw himself burned. With a very sad voice, barely audible, he asked me to forgive him, told me he loved me and that I was the best thing that ever happened to him, but that he couldn't go on. It sounded more like a farewell, and I told him I had spoken with Luis, that he should wait for me, that he'd tell me where he was because we could find help, that I loved him, to hang on, not to give up. He told me he was already home, that he would see me in the morning, and I saw him early at his house. He looked very pale. I brought him his favorite breakfast, but it was impossible to want anything in that house with the terrible smell that filled it. He had marks he was trying to hide from me. We talked for a while. I made him coffee and spent time with him until the afternoon. Even though I didn't want to, I made him something to eat. I tried to tell him that I had spoken to Luis, that we would figure out how to help him, but he didn't seem to care. When it started to get dark, he asked me to leave. He said he needed to be alone, that we would see each other soon and that he hoped he would be better, stronger. He took my hands and kissed them. He told me it was time for me to go, that he was thankful for everything. The next day, Luis called me early to tell me he was preparing everything, that we had to take Aarón to a church in a nearby city. From there, I went to Aaron's house to inform him. I rang the doorbell, but he didn't come out. He didn't answer the phone either. His car was in the driveway and suddenly I felt something in my coat, the house keys. I went in. It didn't smell bad anymore, everything seemed calm, the air felt different. I called him from the door but he didn't answer. I went up to the bedroom and saw the bed unmade, heard the shower running and opened the bathroom door. There he was. On that floor stained with red. What had happened was clear and I would truly love to tell you that he went peacefully, but his face reflected terror. His face had an expression that couldn't be erased. That's why I didn't let anyone open the coffin. In the shock, in those moments that seemed like part of a nightmare, when I called the police, I remember seeing something in the bathroom, something written on the mirror. I swear it looked like that damn name we were told, that spoke to us through the Ouija, written on the mirror but upside down, almost as if it had been written from inside the mirror. I called Luis, then I located them, and well, the rest of the story you already know. When Lucy finished her story, she no longer had tears to cry, and we had no words of comfort that could help her. I didn't know what to say to her. I still don't know. Friends from this community sometimes ask if I miss the paranormal events I used to experience more clearly. What I wish most in this life is to never go through them again and to have never done what we did that day 20 years ago.